Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we're going to review the book The Wind Through the Keyhole by Stephen King. This is a book in the Dark Tower series, and kind of give you kind of fun little background. The Dark Tower series finished in about 2004. That's when I believe he wrote the seventh book, or in the last one. But then in 2011 or 2012, he came out with this book, The Wind Through the Keyhole, which is kind of a book that goes along with, or in between books 4, which was The Wizard and Glass, and books 5 of Wolves and Calla. And since I've already read The Wizard and Glass, I figured I'd read this one before I read The Wolves with Calla, because this is kind of 4.5 is what they usually call it. So there's a little background on that. To give you a summary of what it's about, it does have, of course, the same characters at the beginning of Roland, Eddie Dean, Susanna Dean, Jake Chambers, and Oi, the little Billy Bumbler. And it starts off with them just kind of walking along, and they begin to see, Roland begins to see the sky and begins to feel that it's getting windier, and he gets kind of worried because he thinks that a special storm called a Stark Blast is coming, and it's kind of what I imagined it was kind of like a dust storm or a wind storm, and so he thinks that they really need to go seek shelter, which they do, and while they're in their little shelter, which is kind of like a hut type thing, they're to pass the time. Roland tells the gang a story about this being called the Skin Man, and it's a story of him as a young man when he just began becoming a gunslinger. He is sent by his father to a town called Deberia, not with Elaine and Cuthbert as he was in The Wizard and Glass. He's sent with his friend Jamie DeCurry, and his father is sending him there to look into reports of a being called a Skin Man, who they figured out is a shapeshifter, or in I guess present day they would call it a werewolf, because sometimes werewolf and shapeshifter are used interchangeably. And when they get to Deberia, they realize that this Skin Man or shapeshifter has really just kind of taken over the town and basically destroyed it, except a lone survivor named Bill. And while talking through to Bill, Roland ends up hypnotizing him to get Bill to tell them a little bit about what this Skin Man looks like. And Bill reveals that the Skin Man had a blue kind of flower tattoo on his ankle in kind of a circular motion. And this tells Roland that this Skin Man was a prisoner in the prison in Deberia. And so Jamie, and Bill go to the prison, which is empty at the moment, and Roland sends Jamie to go round up the prisoners who are being held elsewhere in Deberia. And while he's waiting, and while he and Bill are waiting, Roland continues to tell him another story. And this is unfortunately a little confusing in the book, because it's like Roland telling a story within a story. And the second story that Roland tells is a story called The Wind Through the Keyhole, which is where the title comes from. And in this story, he tells Bill about a little boy named Tim Ross, who is 11 years old, and he just lost his father, whose name was Jack Ross, and his mother just married Jack Ross's best friend, whose name is Kells. And in the town that Tim and his mother and Byrne live in, there is a man called the Covenant Man, who is a tax collector, and he's really feared in this town, because this is a poor town, and every time that the tax collector comes and takes their money, he's taking away, their prized money and their money to feed their children and families. So he's not a really nice guy. But the tax collector is rather important in this story because he's really wanting to talk to Tim. And once he and Tim are private, the Covenant Man tells Tim that Byrne Kells was the one who killed Jack Ross, Tim's father, and that not only did Byrne kill his Tim's father, but Byrne has beat his mother blind, and there's only one way to go and get medication to save his mother. And so Tim does, which sends him into kind of a magical, mythical forest to get this potion. And while he's there, he runs into fairies, swamp people, and a talking tiger. And so it's very fantasy. Again, it's fantasy, which the Dark Tower is anyway, but it's kind of a fantasy, kind of within a fantasy, I guess, as I said again. But eventually, Tim does get the potion to help his mother, which she takes and is cured of her blindness. And eventually, Byrne Kells is killed, not by Tim, but by his mother, which I thought was kind of fun. But, and so that ends that story. And once Roland is done telling the story of the wind through the keyhole, Jamie is back with the prisoners, and Bill is able to identify the Skin Man through the prisoners by the blue tattoo and by the physical features that he gave Roland as well. And so the Skin Man is upset that he's now been discovered and tries to hurt the little crew of Jamie, Bill, and Roland ends up killing him with a silver bullet, because again, he's a werewolf, and this is kind of a traditional werewolf story that only a silver bullet can kill them. So, and that ends then the first story that Roland told of the Skin Man, and then, which is pretty much the ending of the book, and the ending of the book is just when the Stark Blast storm is over, and Roland, Eddie, Susanna, Jake, and Oi are ready to get up and go along their journey once more. So, I really didn't like the book, unfortunately. Like I think I said in the Wizard and Glass, this series is getting a little too weird for me and kind of too fantasy. Unfortunately, fantasy is not really my genre of choice. I'm more reading it just to see what happens. So, eventually I'll pick up number 5 again. So, but that's it for this review. My next review that I'm going to do is Eclipse by Stephanie Meyer, which is the 3rd book in the Twilight series. So that's it for this review, and I bid you a farewell and happy reading.